The massive library of the Galactic University stretched up into the purple sky, its crystal spires catching the light of 3 moons. Inside, 3 very different students sat at a floating study table, their forms as varied as their homeworlds. Blue moved his water-filled environment suit closer to the display screen, his tentacles swaying gently in the artificial current. Next to him, Spark flickered with nervous energy, their plasma form contained within a specialized field generator. Stone sat quietly, their heavy crystalline bodies supported by a reinforced chair, small lights blinking across their silicon surface. Random selection is the fairest way, Blue said, his translator converting the underwater sounds into standard galactic speech. Let's see what the database gives us for our xenology project. Spark crackled in agreement, their energy patterns forming words. The professor said first contact reports are always interesting. Push the button, Stone. Stone's crystalline fingers, each weighing as much as a small vehicle, delicately tapped the holographic interface. The database whirred, cycling through thousands of worlds before stopping on an image of a blue and green planet. Earth. Blue's tentacles curled in confusion. That's odd. It's marked as both a Deathworld and a council member. Spark moved closer, their energy field humming. That can't be right. Check the classification. Stone's deep, rumbling voice filled the room. Class 12 Endurance Predator Species. That's almost unheard of. The 3 students stared at the basic data scrolling across their screen. Earth. Gravity 1.0. High range. Atmosphere. Oxygen-nitrogen mix. Highly corrosive. Temperature range. -50 to +50 degrees standard. Extreme variation. Solar radiation. Severe. Tectonic activity. Constant. This must be a mistake, Blue said, his tentacles twisting anxiously. No species could evolve in those conditions. The gravity alone would crush most life forms. Spark flickered rapidly, their equivalent of a head shake. Look at the verification marks. This data is confirmed by the Galactic Science Council. Earth is real, and somehow its species not only survived, but became advanced enough to join galactic society. Stone leaned forward, causing their reinforced chair to creak. There's more. Humans, that's what they call themselves, are listed as Universal Emergency Response Certified. They're the only species with that classification. Blue pulled up more files, his water suit sloshing as he moved excitedly. Found something interesting. Initial observation posts on Earth kept failing. The machinery corroded in the atmosphere, the gravity damaged sensitive equipment, and the temperature swings destroyed backup systems. How did they make first contact then? Spark asked, their plasma form brightening with curiosity. Stone's crystals chimed softly as they laughed. According to this, the humans found one of the broken observation posts and fixed it. They sent a message asking if anyone needed help with their broken equipment. They fixed technology they'd never seen before. Blue's color changed to a lighter shade of surprise. In those conditions. That's not the strangest part, Stone continued. The warning notice here says humans regularly expose themselves to their planet's full environment with minimal protection. They call it going outside. Spark's energy field fluctuated wildly. Outside. In that corrosive oxygen atmosphere. Under all that gravity and radiation. That's impossible. The database has visual records, Blue said, his tentacles dancing over the controls. Should we watch them? The 3 students looked at each other. Their simple project choice had suddenly become much more interesting. None of them had ever seen a Deathworld species before, let alone one classified as an endurance predator. Play the records, Stone said firmly. If we're going to study Earth, we should know what we're dealing with. As Blue activated the visual files, none of them realized they were about to learn why Earth's reputation echoed across the galaxy, or why the term human made even the bravest species pause. Their simple assignment was about to become a lesson in why some worlds forge their inhabitants into something extraordinary. The screen flickered to life, and the first images of Earth began to play. The first images made all three students move back from the screen. They watched as massive waves crashed against rocks, while lightning split the sky and wind bent huge plants called trees almost to their breaking point. "This can't be a civilized world," Blue said, his tentacles curling tightly. "It looks like a disaster zone." "That's just normal Earth weather," Stone read from the data scrolling beside the video. "They call this a storm, and it happens regularly." The footage changed to show a vast desert, heat waves distorting the air above endless sand. Then it shifted to a place called Antarctica, where white powder covered everything and temperatures dropped below freezing. Next came images of something called a volcano, where the planet's inner core broke through the surface in rivers of molten rock. Spark flickered nervously. "And humans live in all these places. Not just live," Stone said, their crystalline form glowing with amazement. "According to these records, they build cities there." The next series of images showed human settlements in each of these extreme environments. Cities in the desert, research stations in the ice, towns in the shadow of active volcanoes. But what really caught their attention were the humans themselves. They're not wearing environmental suits. Blue's water sloshed in his containment unit as he moved closer to the screen. "Look, they're exposed to the raw atmosphere." The footage showed humans walking through their corrosive oxygen air with no protection. They were drinking water that would rust metal, eating foods that would poison most species, and their young ones were playing in conditions that would kill most aliens instantly. "Found something interesting," Stone said, pulling up older records. The first observation post recorded this before it failed. The video showed a human child falling from one of their climbing structures. The observers had recorded it as a fatal incident, noting the height and impact force. But then the child stood up, leaked a small amount of red fluid, and continued playing. "That's impossible," Spark said, their energy form pulsing with disbelief. "The impact calculations are clear. That should have been fatal." Blue was reading through more data. "It gets stranger. Humans regularly break their support structures, bones, they call them, and they just grow them back. They lose external layers of protection, skin, and replace it. They can even survive losing entire parts of their body and continue functioning." The next set of records showed human medical facilities. The three students watched in fascination as humans survived injuries that would have meant instant death for their own species. Humans were healing from burns, recovering from massive physical trauma, and even having internal organs replaced. "Look at the dates," Stone pointed out. "These records are from before Earth joined the galactic community. They were doing all this with primitive technology." Spark moved closer to the screen, their plasma form bright with interest. "There's a note here from the first contact team. It says humans don't understand why we find them remarkable. This is just normal for them." Blue's tentacles waved in excitement as he found another file. "Here's something about their daily activities. Apparently, they need to regularly move their bodies in something called exercise, or they become unhealthy. They intentionally strain their muscles until they hurt, then get stronger. This explains the Class 12 Endurance Predator rating," Stone said. "They're not just surviving their death world. They actively challenge themselves to survive worse conditions." The students sat in silence for a moment, watching more footage of humans going about their daily lives. Each new image seemed more impossible than the last. Humans sleeping through dangerous storms, working in deep mines despite the crushing pressure, diving into corrosive oceans for fun. "I think I understand now," Blue said quietly. "Earth isn't just a death world. It's a training ground. Everything on their planet forced them to become stronger, faster, more resilient." Spark's energy field pulsed thoughtfully. "Should we look at their military history next? If they're this tough just living normally?" Stone nodded, their crystalline surface reflecting the screen's light. "Yes. But first, let's make copies of all these records. No one will believe us without proof." As Blue began downloading the files, none of them noticed that their simple research project had turned into something much more significant. They were about to learn why the galaxy's toughest species always smiled when someone mentioned Earth, and why the phrase "as tough as a human" had become the highest praise in the galactic military. The file is labeled Human Recreation. Blue announced, his tentacles moving uncertainly over the controls. These are activities humans do for fun. The screen lit up with a series of recordings that made all three students question their understanding of what was possible. A human was running through something called a desert, one of Earth's hottest regions, for hundreds of kilometers. The data readings showed temperatures that would melt some species' environmental suits. That can't be right. Spark flickered rapidly. They're running in that heat for days, without stopping. Stone's crystalline form hummed as they accessed more data. It's called an ultramarathon. Humans do this for entertainment. Look at this one. They're racing across a frozen continent called Antarctica. The footage showed humans pulling heavy sleds across endless fields of ice and snow, their breath freezing in the air. The temperature readings made Blue's water vibrate in sympathy. It was cold enough to freeze his entire environment suit solid. Here's something even stranger, Blue said, pulling up another file. They go underwater for fun too. The screen showed humans diving deep into Earth's oceans without protective shells, moving through crushing pressures that would collapse most environmental suits. They were swimming alongside massive ocean creatures, exploring underwater caves, and even living in underwater habitats. Wait, Spark's energy form brightened suddenly. Are they breathing the water? No, Stone replied, checking the data. They hold their breath or carry small air tanks. But look at this. Some humans can hold their breath for over 20 minutes. They just choose not to breathe. The next set of recordings showed humans climbing sheer rock faces with minimal safety equipment. Some were jumping out of flying vehicles with only thin fabric to slow their fall. Others were riding boards down mountains of snow or massive waves in the ocean. I don't understand, Blue said, his color shifting to a confused pale shade. Why do they do these things? There's no practical purpose. Stone found a human researcher's note attached to the file. According to this, humans have a need to push their limits. They deliberately seek out challenging conditions to test themselves. The footage continued, showing humans in something called gyms, special buildings where they went to lift heavy weights and simulate difficult conditions. They would deliberately exhaust themselves, strain their muscles, and subject their bodies to stress that would kill most species. Look at this, Spark said, their plasma form pulsing with excitement. Humans have something called competitive eating. They turn consuming fuel into a contest. The students watched in amazement as humans competed to eat massive amounts of food in short times. The data showed their stomachs expanding to hold amounts that seemed impossible. Found something really interesting, Blue announced. Humans don't just adapt to survive hardships. They get stronger from them. They call it, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Stone's crystals chimed thoughtfully. That explains these medical records. When humans break bones, they grow back stronger. When their muscles tear, they rebuild tougher. Even their mental resilience increases with stress. The screen showed examples of humans recovering from injuries that should have been fatal. They were running on artificial legs, writing with mechanical arms, even thinking with partially artificial brains. So let me understand this, Spark said, their energy flickering thoughtfully. Humans live on a planet that constantly tries to kill them. Instead of leaving, they decide to explore its most dangerous places. When that's not challenging enough, they invent new ways to test themselves. And they do all this for fun. Exactly, Stone replied. And that's not even considering what they're capable of when they're actually trying to survive. Should we look at their emergency response records next? Blue's tentacles waved in agreement. Yes, if this is what they do for recreation, I want to see what humans can do when lives are actually at stake. As they prepared to access the emergency response files, All three students now understood why Earth's reputation had spread across the galaxy. They weren't just studying the Deathworld species anymore. They were learning about creatures who had turned their harsh environment into a source of strength and who seemed to thrive on doing the impossible. The file is labeled Human Recreation, Blue announced, his tentacles moving uncertainly over the controls. These are activities humans do for fun. The screen lit up with a series of recordings that made all three students question their understanding of what was possible. A human was running through something called a desert, one of Earth's hottest regions, for hundreds of kilometers. The data readings showed temperatures that would melt some species' environmental suits. That can't be right. Spark flickered rapidly. They're running in that heat for days, without stopping. Stone's crystalline form hummed as they accessed more data. It's called an ultramarathon. Humans do this for entertainment. Look at this one. They're racing across a frozen continent called Antarctica. The footage showed humans pulling heavy sleds across endless fields of ice and snow, their breath freezing in the air. The temperature readings made Blue's water vibrate in sympathy. It was cold enough to freeze his entire environment suit solid. Here's something even stranger, Blue said, pulling up another file. They go underwater for fun too. The screen showed humans diving deep into Earth's oceans without protective shells, moving through crushing pressures that would collapse most environmental suits. They were swimming alongside massive ocean creatures, exploring underwater caves, and even living in underwater habitats. Wait, Spark's energy form brightened suddenly. Are they breathing the water? No, Stone replied, checking the data. They hold their breath or carry small air tanks. But look at this. Some humans can hold their breath for over 20 minutes. They just choose not to breathe. The next set of recordings showed humans climbing sheer rock faces with minimal safety equipment. Some were jumping out of flying vehicles with only thin fabric to slow their fall. Others were riding boards down mountains of snow or massive waves in the ocean. I don't understand, Blue said, his color shifting to a confused pale shade. Why do they do these things? There's no practical purpose. Stone found a human researcher's note attached to the file. According to this, humans have a need to push their limits. They deliberately seek out challenging conditions to test themselves. The footage continued, showing humans in something called gyms, special buildings where they went to lift heavy weights and simulate difficult conditions. They would deliberately exhaust themselves, strain their muscles, and subject their bodies to stress that would kill most species. Look at this, Spark said, their plasma form pulsing with excitement. Humans have something called competitive eating. They turn consuming fuel into a contest. The students watched in amazement as humans competed to eat massive amounts of food in short times. The data showed their stomachs expanding to hold amounts that seemed impossible. Found something really interesting, Blue announced. Humans don't just adapt to survive hardships, they get stronger from them. They call it what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Stone's crystals chimed thoughtfully. That explains these medical records. When humans break bones, they grow back stronger. When their muscles tear, they rebuild tougher. Even their mental resilience increases with stress. The screen showed examples of humans recovering from injuries that should have been fatal. They were running on artificial legs, writing with mechanical arms, even thinking with partially artificial brains. So let me understand this, Spark said, their energy flickering thoughtfully. Humans live on a planet that constantly tries to kill them. Instead of leaving, they decide to explore its most dangerous places. When that's not challenging enough, they invent new ways to test themselves. And they do all this for fun. Exactly, Stone replied. And that's not even considering what they're capable of when they're actually trying to survive. Should we look at their emergency response records next? Blue's tentacles waved in agreement. Yes. If this is what they do for recreation, I want to see what humans can do when lives are actually at stake. As they prepared to access the emergency response files, all three students now understood why Earth's reputation had spread across the galaxy. They weren't just studying the Deathworld species anymore. They were learning about creatures who had turned their harsh environment into a source of strength and who seemed to thrive on doing the impossible. These are the most recent files about Earth, Blue said, his tentacles moving excitedly in his water suit. They're from just last month. The screen showed images that made their previous discoveries seem like ancient history. Humans had taken their Deathworld survival skills to the stars, but they hadn't forgotten their roots. Look at their space stations. Spark flickered brightly. They don't build them like other species do. Stone studied the designs carefully. Most species create perfect environments in space. Humans deliberately include their planet's challenges. Their stations have varying gravity levels, temperature zones, and even artificial weather systems. The footage showed massive space structures where humans lived and worked. Unlike the carefully controlled environments of other species, Earth's stations were a mix of conditions that would terrify most aliens. They call them training habitats. Blue read from the data. Each section copies a different Earth environment. There's even an underwater city section where they train for water planet rescues. The screen changed to show Earth itself. The planet that had once been avoided as too dangerous was now a hub of galactic activity. Ships from hundreds of worlds orbited above, carrying teams who had come to learn from humanity's harsh world. This is interesting, Spark said, their energy form pulsing with excitement. Earth now has special training zones. They took their most dangerous regions and turned them into survival schools. The footage showed alien species learning to handle Earth's gravity, training in its deep oceans, and practicing in its extreme weather. Each group was guided by human instructors who made everything look easy. Found something amazing, Stone announced. Humans have started exploring the deep zones, those areas of space we thought were impossible to survive in. They watched recordings of human ships entering regions of space with crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, and deadly radiation. Where other species sent robotic probes, humans went in person, protected only by ships they called pretty sturdy. Blue's color shifted to a shade of disbelief. They'd built colonies in those zones, not just research stations, actual colonies. They're living in conditions that would kill most species instantly. The screen showed human settlements on worlds that made Earth look gentle. Underground cities on heavy gravity planets, floating habitats in gas giants, and research bases on worlds with acid rain and constant storms. According to this, Spark said, reading the latest reports, humans are now the galaxy's experts on survival in extreme conditions. Every emergency response team has at least one human advisor. Stone's crystalline surface glowed as they found more files. Other species are trying to copy human training methods. They're building their own dangerous environment zones. But their voice trailed off in amazement. But what? Blue asked, his tentacles curling with curiosity. But they have to make them safer, Stone continued. No other species can handle the full Earth-level challenges. Even their training zones are too dangerous for most aliens. The final set of images showed the newest human project. Massive ships designed to explore the galaxy's most dangerous regions. Each ship was a mobile survival training center, carrying teams of human instructors to teach other species how to handle extreme conditions. I never thought I'd say this, Blue said quietly, but Earth's reputation as a death world might have saved countless lives. Without humans, Spark finished, we wouldn't be able to rescue people from half the disasters we face. Their death world turned them into the galaxy's best survivors. Stone started copying the most recent files. We should interview some humans next. I want to know what they think about all this. As they prepared to search for human contacts, the three students realized something important. They had started their project thinking they would study a primitive death world. Instead, they had discovered how Earth's harsh conditions had created something unique, a species that turned danger into opportunity and impossibility into challenge. The screen showed one last image. A human emergency team teaching young aliens how to survive in extreme conditions. Above their training facility, A sign displayed Earth's new motto. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Let us teach you how. Professor Tom walked into the university's special environments room, smiling at the three alien students. He wore no environmental suit, just simple clothes, while each student needed their own specialized protection systems. So, he said, sitting down on a reinforced chair next to Stone, "You've been studying Earth. What would you like to know?" The three students looked at each other. After all their research, finally meeting a human felt strange. Here was a creature who could survive conditions that would kill them instantly, yet he looked so normal. Blue spoke first, his translator converting his underwater sounds to speech. "Professor, we've seen the records, but we don't understand. Why do humans push themselves into such dangerous situations?" Tom laughed, a sound that made Spark's energy field flicker nervously. "We get asked that a lot." The simple answer: because it's there. Humans have always wanted to explore, to climb the highest mountain, to dive the deepest ocean, to reach the farthest star. But the risks, Stone began, are part of the challenge, Tom finished. Look, every species faces fear. We humans just decided to run toward it instead of away from it. It's not that we're fearless. We're terrified plenty of times. We just don't let that stop us. Spark moved closer, their containment field humming. The emergency response records show humans continuing to help others even when severely injured. How is that possible? The professor's face grew serious. That's something we learned from Earth itself. On our world, you either help each other or you don't survive. When disaster strikes, humans don't think about themselves. We think about who needs help. But the physical damage. Blue's tentacles waved in concern. We saw records of humans functioning with broken bones, torn muscles, severe burns. "Ah, that's the adrenaline," Tom smiled. "It's a chemical our bodies produce in emergencies. Lets us ignore pain, increases our strength, helps us keep going when we should probably stop. Most species evolved to avoid damage. We evolved to work through it." Stone's crystals chimed thoughtfully. "Is that why Earth now trains other species? To teach them this attitude?" "Partly," Tom nodded. "But it's more than that. We're teaching survival skills, yes, but we're also teaching something more important: hope. The belief that no situation is hopeless if you just keep trying. The records show humans have a saying," Spark said. "Where there's a will, there's a way." Exactly. Tom's enthusiasm made his chair creak. That's what we're really teaching out there. Not just how to survive, but how to believe you can survive. How to look at impossible odds and say, "Watch me." Blue's color shifted to a curious shade. "But surely there are limits, things even humans won't attempt." The professor laughed again. "Oh, those are our favorite things to attempt. Tell a human something's impossible, and you'll have 100 of us trying to prove it possible before the day's done." "Is that why you explore the deep zones?" Stone asked. "Because they're considered impossible." "Partly," Tom admitted, "but also because someone might need help out there someday. If we don't learn how to survive there now, how can we help when that emergency comes?" The students were quiet for a moment, processing this. Finally, Spark spoke. "Professor, does it bother humans that other species see Earth as a death world?" Tom's smile grew wider. "Not at all. We're proud of it. Our harsh world made us who we are. Every challenge Earth threw at us made us stronger, more resilient, more determined. Now we can use those lessons to help others." "One last question," Blue said. "What's next for humans? What new impossible thing will you attempt?" The professor's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Well, we just started exploring the space between galaxies. Everyone says it's too dangerous, too empty, too hostile to life." He grinned. "Sounds perfect for humans, don't you think?" As the interview ended, the three students understood something their research hadn't shown them. Humans hadn't just survived their death world. They had embraced it, learned from it, and now used those lessons to push the boundaries of what was possible. Earth's harsh environment hadn't created survivors, It had created pioneers. The main lecture hall of the Galactic University was packed. Word had spread about the 3 students who had researched Earth, and everyone wanted to hear their findings. Blue, Spark, and Stone stood before the crowd, their environmental systems humming quietly. Our research began with a random selection. Blue started, his tentacles moving confidently now. We chose Earth, expecting to study a primitive death world. What we found changed our understanding of the galaxy. The screen behind them lit up with images of Earth's various environments. The audience gasped at scenes of raging oceans, active volcanoes, and extreme weather that would destroy most species' environmental suits. This is Earth. Stone's crystalline voice rang out. A planet where the air corrodes metal, where the gravity crushes standard equipment, where temperatures swing between freezing and boiling. This is the world that created humans. Spark moved forward, their energy form glowing brightly. Most species would have abandoned such a planet. Humans didn't just survive there, they thrived. Every challenge their world presented, they turned into an opportunity. The presentation showed clips from their research. Humans running ultramarathons through deserts, diving in deep oceans, climbing impossible mountains. The audience watched in amazement as humans pushed themselves through conditions that would kill most species. But that's not the most impressive part. Blue continued. What makes humans truly remarkable is what they did with their death world experience. The screen changed to show human emergency teams in action, rescuing people from space station disasters, diving into toxic atmospheres to save crashed ships, running into radiation zones to prevent reactor breaches. Humans took every survival skill their harsh world taught them, Stone explained, and used those skills to help others. They didn't just learn to survive. They learned to teach survival. Spark displayed the latest statistics. Today, over 50 species send their emergency response teams to train on Earth. Every major rescue organization has human advisors. The galaxy's most feared death world has become its greatest training ground. The presentation showed the newest Earth training facilities. Massive complexes where humans taught other species how to handle extreme conditions. The audience watched as aliens learned to function in Earth's gravity, to handle its atmosphere, to survive its challenges. But perhaps most importantly, Blue said, humans taught us something we hadn't considered. They showed us that what we call impossible might just be unexplored. The screen displayed images of human colonies in the deep zones, research stations in previously uninhabitable regions, and exploration ships pushing into unknown space. We interviewed Professor Tom. Stone continued, and he told us something remarkable. Humans don't see danger as something to avoid. They see it as something to understand and overcome. Spark's energy field pulsed with excitement. They have a saying, "What doesn't kill us makes us stronger." Their entire species lives by this idea. Every challenge they face, they learn from. Every obstacle they encounter, they study. Every barrier they meet, they work to overcome. The final images showed human instructors teaching young aliens, sharing the lessons Earth had taught them. The audience sat in respectful silence, understanding the significance of what they were seeing. Our conclusion is this, Blue said firmly. Earth's reputation as a death world was never wrong. But our understanding of what that meant was, we saw a planet too dangerous to live on. Humans saw a training ground for the impossible. Stone's crystals glowed as they delivered the final point. Today, Earth is no longer feared. It's respected. Species across the galaxy now understand that if you want to learn how to survive anything, how to overcome any obstacle, how to face any challenge, you go to Earth. You learn from humans. Spark moved to the center stage. And perhaps most importantly, humans are still pushing boundaries. They're still exploring, still learning, still teaching. They're proving that with enough determination, enough courage, and enough will to keep trying, nothing is truly impossible. The lecture hall erupted in applause. As the 3 students stood before their peers, they realized their simple research project had uncovered something profound. Earth wasn't just a death world that created survivors. It was a crucible that had forged an entire species into the galaxy's greatest teachers of hope, determination, and the art of overcoming the impossible.